Welcome to Music Outlook LA, the podcast which highlights the independent artist, whether they are a musician, vocalist, actor, actress, live audio or in-studio engineer, or a videographer, photographer. I'm your host, Will Kimsey. Each episode, we'll look at the gigs of the independent artists, from the venues we play to how we set up and break down, the gear we use and why we use it, and the info we hope you'll find useful as we all make our way in the entertainment industry. Music Outlook LA is brought to you by Kim Z Entertainment LLC. Go to kim-zentertainment.com to find out what they're doing for the independent artist. Kim Z Entertainment LLC. Independent entertainment done independently. My guests today are Marc Copage and Victoria Savage. If you've ever watched sitcoms from the late 60s, you may remember Marc from the hit show Julia, starring Diahann Carroll, where he was cast as her son, Corey Baker. Victoria may also be familiar to you as one of the celebrants in a Dunkin Donuts Celebrate the Holidays commercial from the year 2016, where she can be seen at both the beginning and the end of that spot. Both are working as indie artists on their own projects, and we'll be talking about that as well as their gear and share any important information that could help all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Marc Copage and Victoria Savage. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Music Outlook LA. How are you both doing?
Doing great.
Thanks, Will. Thanks so much for this. Yes, doing great here too.
Great. Just full disclosure, we had some technical issues, but we seem to have resolved them. And in a future episode, I hope to have you guys back again. And we're going to do our best to make sure we don't have those issues and take it from there. All right. So, Marc, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us about yourself? Who is Marc Copage?
Well, I've been in and around the entertainment industry for most of my life, having started. Did you hear all that noise?
No, sure didn't.
There was just like a loud motorcycle going through, and I couldn't even hear me, so I'm surprised you could. Anyway, I've been in and around the entertainment industry for most of my life, having started out as a child actor on a groundbreaking series that starred Diahann Carroll, known as Julia, who was the first woman to be given her own show, or black woman to be given her own show in a non-stereotypical role for black people in general.
All right, great. Victoria, tell us about yourself.
Thanks. I'm an actor and writer, and I've been living in LA for about 12 years from New York, and I describe myself as a half Black Jewish Buddhist. I was born in Nairobi. My mother got a job teaching law, and when my dad proposed, she said, "I'd love to marry you, but just so you know, I'm going to Africa. Is that okay?" And he was really excited. So they went, and they had me. And then politically, it got really weird. So somebody called them in the middle of the night. They don't know if it was a friend or the government, and told them that they'd better take their new baby and leave the country. So they did, came back. We spent some time in Houston and then New York, and now we're back to the beginning. Now here I am in LA.
All right, great. Okay, let's just jump right into it. As everybody knows, this is 2021. We have been in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic for over a year now. So, which gets me to my first question for the both of you. What gigs did you guys have prior to the pandemic, and what are you both doing now? Victoria, why don't you take this one first?
Well, things were kind of slow prior to COVID. I had just finished an independent feature with a friend of mine. We shot in Colorado, and she wrote everything, directed everything, edited everything. And then it really slowed down, and during COVID, it's crazy to say, I've been busier than I've been in years. And a lot of that is because I've been writing and producing my own stuff, but also like people have just been reaching out randomly to help on little projects here and there. Yeah, crazy but true.
Because they have more time on their hands.
They do, Mark. They have more time on their hands.
Exactly. All of us do, and I'm no exception. So, Mark, what about you? What were you doing before the pandemic, and what are you doing now?
I was working before the pandemic, and I'm working now, but because of the pandemic, it is, I like the idea that, I hadn't really been pursuing the entertainment business for a while. And now I've started to think about it again and starting to get some things in place to perhaps give myself a higher profile to get back and getting some work in the entertainment business. And a lot of those changes have to do because of the pandemic. And instead of running across town at the last minute for an audition, battling rush hour traffic, most of the things are self-tape now. But even beyond that, as Victoria was saying, it's a lot of people have gotten the idea because they have time on their hands to create their own content. So I am gearing myself up into that direction again. I had created content, but not necessarily for myself, more, doing videos for people. I was in the adult entertainment industry for about 5 years and did some little shorts there, behind the scenes kind of stuff. But now I'm going to be getting my own podcast and YouTube show going. Thanks to the inspiration of you and others like you.
We're going to have to talk about the adult entertainment thing. I did not know that. But we're going to keep this G-rated. And, just have fun with it. Have fun with it. Mark, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, you were one of the OG child actors from way back when. I watched Julia as a young person. As I said, you were cast as Corey Baker, and that show was running in 1968. I caught it a few years later in syndication, but you were opposite the late, great Diahann Carroll, and me being an old school TV head, the most immediate reference is Dynasty for one of her other main shows, and she's done a lot of work aside from that. But on that, what got you started in the industry, Mark?
Luck or fate, one of the two. Maybe a combination of both. I was not a child actor at the time, had no interest in pursuing a career in entertainment. My father was an actor. I was with him one day when he went to drop off some pictures with his agent, and the agent thought I would be perfect for this new show that was coming out. There's a lot of buzz about it, and I ended up getting talked into going out on the audition, and I ended up getting the role.
All right. Very good. Victoria, getting to some of your stuff. You got a bio for yourself on your website, victoriasavage.net. So just two questions, because I think I might have inadvertently skipped one, but here we go. Regarding your bio, it says you started playing violin at the age of 3. Are you still playing?
I am not still playing. It was a very hard road for me, and I hate to say this to you both because I know you're both musicians. But it was
Will's actually just looking for a violinist for his new band.
That's yeah, I know. I'm so rusty it wouldn't even work. But it was not a love affair between me and the violin. I guess when I was 3, my family and I were somewhere, and I saw one of those tiny violins that children play, and I pointed to it and I said, I want to play one of those little guitars. And my parents were like, haha, she means violin. And I really don't think that I meant violin. I think I meant guitar because I knew the word for it. But anyway, they got me one and I started to play, and it was hard. Like, I didn't want to learn to read music, and I had a bunch of mean teachers. And I didn't want to practice, and on and on. And finally, you know, my parents were spending all this money, and because they kept saying to themselves, any minute now she'll fall in love with it. And when I was 12, my mother and father finally said, you can stop if you want, hoping that they were doing a little reverse psychology on me. But I did. I stopped. However, music, it really gave me a very deep appreciation of music in general. Like, I will say that I love all kinds of music, like from opera to rap to, you know, I'm really into the 60s wall of sound right now, and any kind of jazz. So, and it gave me a really good ear. So I can carry a tune, especially in the shower. But anyway, I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful for those years, even though they were difficult.
I can definitely relate to that. I can relate to that. I can sing. I try not to. I just prefer being a keyboard player, a musician. That's just my strong suit. I stick with what I'm good at, you know. So, you know, we all have to figure it out at some point, you know. Even though I did sing in choirs and everything coming up, I still prefer to play and let the singing be done by those who are way better than me. For both of you, you might have touched on this, but how has the pandemic affected the way in which you both work?
You mean in regards to entertainment, I'm assuming, versus
Yes,
my regular job?
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It seems like it's opened up some doors just as far as collaboration. You know, people are able to collaborate on projects where they don't even live in the same city. It seems like it's if you're in entertainment as much, I guess, you know, especially if you're, you know, in live entertainment, it's closed some doors, but I think it's opened up more doors possibly than it's closed, with a greater potential for a reward from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. Victoria, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Mark. Like, so many more doors have opened for me. So I've written my whole life, like, just short stories and poems and whatever, but I never really started writing for myself until pretty much COVID started. And I don't know what took me so long. I've always had coaches and people say, do your own work, write your own stuff. And finally, I'm taking their advice. And, you know, the new technology is really exciting. We're shooting remotely. So I think I've already said this, but we're all in different states. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we would have been able to do it before COVID, but we wouldn't even have thought about it. And I think, Will, you mentioned this, like, we were forced to be more creative because of the limitation. Yes. And because of the limitation, it's actually better. Like, our quality is better, you know, because we're forced into a little box and we have to make what we have work. So it's been really exciting.
And we're going to touch on all of that when we get to the gear that you guys are using, because this time in our lives has forced all of us to make some major adjustments. Whereas before you might go to a major studio lot and actually do a shoot of some sort for a project, whereas now everybody's got to figure out new ways to do it, and most of us are doing them at home. I know when we were talking earlier, Victoria, you mentioned that everybody now has the ability to be in different locations, bringing their part of the project into the mix and then just sending it to somebody who's going to be able to, you know, edit all of that and marry all of the different parts together. So on that, Victoria, each of us being indie artists and content creators, we've got stuff all over the internet. And one of the things that I saw was a project of yours called Troubled Man, and I thoroughly did enjoy it. And if I remember correctly, it was just you and another actor, and not trying to give away too much because everybody should go to your YouTube page, which will be mentioned in the show notes. So you guys make sure you do check that out. But I enjoyed it thoroughly, the interaction between you and your co-star in that project. But I noticed that you were using a single that I thoroughly enjoy by an artist I grew up listening to, Miles Davis's single Blue and Green. So do you or does anyone compose any original music for your projects?
Well, I'm really fortunate to have met two really talented three now, three talented composers. The composer who helped us with that project is named Rob Diggy. He's a Grammy winner, and he, helped us figure everything out. I met him through some friends, actually. And then I did a little indie project a couple of years ago and met another composer named Bruce Bray, who's another wonderful guy. And he has actually composed a little intro for one of the projects that I'm writing right now. So I'm really fortunate that way.
Mark, to you, speaking of things that I've watched, on IMDb, there is an entry for acting demo reel number 1. And I mention this because in the closing credits, it indicates that you did everything yourself. And that is truly the mark of an indie artist, when you can wear all the different hats, which is something we're going to get to. So when you did that, give us a sense of the workflow for that project. Maybe your angle choices for the cameras, how you set up the scene. I mean, it looked very simple, but it was effective, How long did it take you to write that? Just give us a sense of the behind the scenes of acting demo reel 1.
It was actually a piece that I took from a autobiography that I'm working on, basically the introduction to the memoir that I'm working on. And basically it was done out of, I did everything because I had no choice but to do everything. So I set up 3 Campbells with 3 different angles and took the dialogue pretty much from my introduction of my memoir, and then just edited it all together with Final Cut Pro.
I love that program.
Yeah.
I mentioned before to not just you, but to everybody I know, I'm working with a couple other people who are just now getting into Final Cut Pro, that it's basically iMovie on steroids. So there are more plugins, more scene changes that you can apply. It's just everything. If you are an Apple user, and my guests know I'm an Apple head, and I am glad to have 2 fellow Apple heads on the show at the same time. Just take iMovie and give it some oomph, and you've got Final Cut Pro. It works on the same premise, the same principle. The dashboard is the same. You can drag and drop your scene changes in at the right place. Switch it over to the scissor mode on the mouse. Cut what you want out of it. Or just make a single cut and maybe highlight the rest on the right, shove it down a little bit, drop a scene change in there. You can change the duration of the fade. There's just so many different things you could do with that, and I really do like that, and just about every Apple app that they have come up with. You guys touched on it before. It's not just because of the situation that we're in now with the pandemic. It's just as over the years went by, the technology advanced more so to the point that now everybody can create their own content. You don't need to go to a major recording studio if you're a singer or instrumentalist. You could do it all in your own home. I mean, think about this. If you took all of that gear that they used in just the 80s to record in a recording studio, now it's in a computer. You're talking about stuff that stood, in many cases, 4 feet tall, 3 feet wide, you know, and that's just an old school reel-to-reel recorder, depending on the make and model. And now you've gone from and I mean, there's nothing wrong with reel-to-reel, and for a lot of people, myself included, nothing beats that sound of or smell of a good old reel-to-reel, you know. And now it's in a computer. I mean, you take Victoria and Mark in for the camera work and for being actor and actress. You take a very large camera, maybe the one that the cameraman wears over his shoulder with the harness and the whole 9 yards, and he's moving around with this, and those guys had to be pretty strong to work those things. Or even a camera that requires you to sit down in a chair, the big high-end professional ones that are used at the major studio houses, not just in LA, but all over the world. And now you've got similar technology in a camera that fits in the palm of your hand, as well as on your phone. Mm-hmm. So you've gone from, you know, exactly. You've gone from these ginormous pieces of equipment to now things that fit in the palm of your hand or sit literally on your lap. You've taken audio and you've turned it into digital, into ones and zeros. And now there it is on your screen and you can see it. So, I mean, I am very happy with things the way they are because I am a big believer in tech. I also believe in the old school methods. You know, when you can't do it one way, you can always go and get the old school stuff. And if you keep it in good condition, you can always dust off the stuff. You know, as they say, get it out of mothballs and, you know, set it up, make it happen, and convert it later. So, Victoria, speaking of all of that stuff and everything, and you mentioned that you were writing your own material, doing your own projects, and all of that. Can you give us a sense of some of the hats that you're wearing as an indie content creator?
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what you just said and just add that I really love this new technology because it's really leveled the playing field for people like me. Mm-hmm. You know, I can shoot a full-length film on an iPhone or two. Like, so that's what, $2,000 or $3,000 right there. That's it. You know, I don't have to be a gigantic studio now to get my stuff done. So anyway, so yes, I'm wearing all the hats. Well, mm-hmm. I'm wearing the cowboy hat and the top hat and the baseball cap.
As well as the Monopoly hat. There you go, which is one of my favorite pieces on the board.
Exactly. Right. So I wrote a little TV show for myself called Berta May and Balula, and I am the executive producer, the casting director, the writer, the location scout, mm-hmm. the set dresser, the PR person. You know, when I take it to market, I will be the representative.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm really very impressed with actors who can pull off a big budget feature film, you know, Tom Cruise, Mel Gibson, like whoever, you know, regardless of how we feel about them as people, like to actually produce something and be really good in it at the same time is like a skill in itself. And I don't think I would be able to do it, except that I wrote these scripts and they're already like in me.
Yeah.
So it's a very good lesson in how to sort of take off the creative, or switch, I guess, because you never get rid of your creative hat, but to switch from your creative hat to your like logical hat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working through it, but it's a really good exercise, and it's taught me a lot about the rest of the business. How much work it goes into producing something, everything behind the scenes, like how long editing really takes to be good.
Yeah.
How composers have to watch the thing over and over and really line up the feeling and the emotion. So anyway, it's been really great.
Mark, what about you? What hats are you wearing, and do you collaborate with others, or are you a solo guy yourself?
Well, solo in the past, but moving forward, I will be collaborating with someone on this podcast that I'm putting together, someone that has a lot more experience than me in doing it. So I'm looking forward to that. And it just seems to be a, who knows what'll happen, but there are people that have developed complete industries for themselves just off their podcast shows and YouTube channels. A lot of it I don't get. I've seen some of it, and it's like 13-year-old humor, fart jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'll figure out my own audience, and I'm not necessarily looking to conquer the world, but putting a little something aside for my old age and retirement would be helpful too.
Yeah, exactly. Because we as indie content creators, as you mentioned, Victoria, we are responsible for taking care of virtually every aspect of our production, of our works. Mm-hmm. From the concept in our heads to getting it on the paper, no matter what type of project it is, to actually making the project, again, no matter what type of project it is, whether it is completely audio, as is in my case, most of my projects are audio based, or in your case with your projects, with both of you, cameras. Is it a video? Where do you put the camera? Is my light right? Why do I have that excess shadow? What's causing it? What type of day am I going to do this in? It's raining. No, yes, no, maybe. What's the weather going to be like next week? Is this
which is all
ready?
a pain in the ass, but at the end of the day, at least you would have created something, which beats the heck out of waiting for your agent or manager to call you.
There you go. Right. There you go. Because you're finally getting it together. You don't have to wait for agency X to give you a call and say, I've got this role here for you, and sweet talk you into it, and you figure out.
Yeah, and the reality is that there's 100 other actors that more likely than not can do just as good a job as you in that role. And I have been, I've worked for casting people too, or in casting facilities for short periods of time, but it did give me another perspective working for these people. And I've been in, I was in one session where, it was down to 3 actors, and the producers literally threw the 3 pictures up in the air, and the one that landed upright first was the one that got the job.
Oh, that is crazy. That is crazy. But see, as indie artists and indie producers, content creators, we are able to avoid all of that. We're able to decide, what's going to get out there, what's going to be on the cutting room floor, what will our audience see, who will our audience be. I know one of the many hats that I have to wear, and you touched on this, Victoria, is not just the casting person, even though I primarily deal with audio, is getting it out there. I'm my own promo person, so I constantly have to be on the internet, making sure that my channels are up to date. Is this the latest picture? I just got through shooting my own promo pictures. Nobody was there. I set up an iPhone and a digital 35 millimeter camera, and put them both on tripods. Hit the timer, ran over to my spot, had 10 seconds to put my game face on for the picture, and snapped the shot and just blasted off about 50 or 100 of them. And how many did I end up using? 25.
That's great. You know, that's not bad at all. 25
exactly.
That you like.
Yeah. And then to make sure, and this is something I touch upon in my shows all the time, is legally protecting it. One of the things that I do is to put a watermark on all of my photos. I put the company watermark for Kim Z Entertainment right in the bottom right corner. I do it through, you can actually do it either through photos or through preview.
Through photos
on the Apple.
Or preview on your Mac?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Photos or preview.
Yeah, I'll. You and I could talk about it off air, and it's actually pretty easy. You can also do the same thing in both Final Cut Pro as well as in iMovie. I have a couple of things on our website, kim-zentertainment.com, and jokingly, but seriously, the dash is most important because there are 2 Kim Z Entertainments out there. Mine is kim-zentertainment.com. The other ones are gentlemen who are DJs in the Midwest. And surprisingly, me being an African American, they are not. We still have the same exact last name, pronounced the exact same way. And you know, that's another thing you have to do. You have to do the research. Like Victoria, I mean, this is not one of the questions I was going to ask, but you can answer this. When you were putting your website together, victoriasavage.net, did you find yourself having to make sure nobody else took that name? And did you have to make a decision between .com or .net or whatever?
I did. There is a victoriasavage.com that somebody owns. There's nothing on it. Like, if you go to that, it'll take you to GoDaddy or something like that.
Yes.
So I did have to choose .net. And then, you know, I started my own production company this year, Savage Productions, and there are a few out there. So I had to, the legal name is actually Savage Productions LLC. And then the website is savageproductionsllc.com. So right. I had to, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things we have to be responsible for. That's something as non-independents, somebody else does. But now, as you mentioned, you have a greater appreciation for, we have to do that. We have to get out there and be on the internet, making sure that our content is up to date, making sure that this picture is a good picture. Mark, if you were to start your own site and get it together, you'd have to say, okay, what's my header going to look like? Am I going to go with the good old standard Times Roman font? Am I going to go with Arial? Am I going to make it bold? Is it going to do italics? All those things do play into it. So, you know, I thoroughly enjoy it. Yes, it takes a while to get everything together. What somebody might think only takes 24 hours actually takes 24 plus days to do. I mean, you think about it. You do a project. It's a 15-minute short, for example. It goes from the idea concept in someone's head to paper, from paper to casting, from casting to finding a place, from finding a place or location to actually recording. Who's going to run the camera? Who's going to do the lighting? Who's going to hold the microphone? Who's your audio guy? And you have to take care of each and every one of those issues. And if you do it yourself, like you said earlier, Mark, I'm going to put this first camera here. The second one's going to go here. This one's going to go here. And then you got to run to each camera and say, okay, something's not right. I've got too much shadow. Oh, it's that light. Let me go fix this light. Okay, and Victoria, you're like, Oh, I don't like the sound. There's too much Okay, let me go grab a towel and shove it under the door. Oh, there we go. Okay, that got rid of all that excess echo. So,
Yeah.
folks, we love what we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. You know.
Yes.
One of my quotes on my site that I put in all of my show notes is, and I've learned that it is actually from Confucius, unless somebody wants to chime in and say it's not. And it goes, do a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I truly believe that. I truly do. So, I mean, if you're going from concept to product, there are so many steps in between, and the technology has just advanced to the point to where you don't need the big industry machine to make that happen. You know, as far as music goes, which is my main reference, I look at the record industry. The record label is not what it used to be in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It just isn't. There are too many people out there who have DAWs, digital audio workstations. I'm one of them. I'm raising my hand. You all can't see me, but I'm waving my hand like a mad banshee. I use Logic Pro 10. I'm an Apple head. Like I said, I use Final Cut Pro. I use Logic 10. I've got nice microphones. I'm a deal shopper. I will look for the sale, all of that stuff. And we are blessed to be able to have what we have, and we've worked hard for it, and we're going to hold on to it and everything. I mean, just in this room that I'm recording in, I had to go on to Amazon and I had to get little squares to absorb some of the excess echo in the room because I had way too much. And it's not completely covered with those square sound sponges. And for some reason now I can't think of the technical name for it, but everybody who listens knows what I'm talking about. But I've got some in key places to absorb the sound and the echo to some degree. You know, I've conditioned the room. But, you know, that tech is there. We have to wear all of these different hats. We have to take care of our own promo. We have to make sure our stuff is legally registered with copyright.gov. Do not, ladies and gentlemen, go to somebody else that says that they can copyright your stuff for you for less than the government. It can't be done. It's a lie. Do not believe it. It is fake news. Go right to copyright.gov. Yeah, I said it, fake news. Go to copyright.gov. The process is simple. Create an account, register your work. If you spent anywhere from 5 minutes to 5 years creating something, isn't it worth protecting? If you're going to go shop it out there, isn't it worth protecting? I'm off the soapbox.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
There you
absolutely. Go. Don't go to the do go to the Writers Guild and register it, but also go to the Copyright Office and do it the right way.
There you go. My wife has some scripts that she has written, and she's got some other stuff she's done. She's got her stuff registered with good old WGA. That's right. Writers Guild of America. Or is it Association? I forget. Victoria, which one is it? Is it Association or America?
Right, America.
Okay.
Writers Guild of America,
There are so many acronyms out there. I'm a member of I'm a member of ASCAP.
Yep.
And I had to decide, am I going to go ASCAP or BMI? You want to know what it was? The fee.
Oh, yep.
So neither of those is necessarily better than the other, then, ASCAP or BMI.
I asked that of somebody, and most people say it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, Mark. To be quite honest with you, both do the same. They're both charged with going out there and getting your royalties for stuff that you've done. The song that I used to open and close the show is a song that I wrote way back in 87 called Diva in Distress. And it's been legally protected. And way back in the day when I was a poor, broke college student who had no money. I did what was known as the poor man's copyright. Y'all familiar with that?
You mail it to yourself?
There you go, and never open it. And the postmark back then served as your legal notice. So, of course, I had to make a copy that I could actually use and one that I would have to mail to myself and literally never open it. So it's in my cabinet on paper that is 30 years old. You know, and so, you know, I finally went to copyright.gov, and since very few people heard it, and the people that I played it for weren't musicians, so I wasn't worried about somebody hearing my stuff and copying my chord changes in the exact order I used them and my melody. And so, you know, I wasn't worried because I didn't play it for other musicians except for those that I actually could trust, but it's legally protected. And, you know, folks, they will ask you certain questions on copyright.gov. Has it been published? Whatever. And you just take it from there. Just answer honestly. Once you get that document registered, you will get a confirmation number. Once you receive confirmation that you have registered your product, you can go ahead and put it out there. You do not have to wait for the certificate to come back. So on that, and again, I get on this soapbox, but I'm going to climb off of it as often as I can. For both of you, since you...
Out of curiosity, why do you think that BMI and ASCAP didn't join forces the way AFTRA and SAG did?
You tell me and we'll both know.
Wondering if you had any insight since you're more in the musical. I think that AFTRA and SAG a lot.
Yeah.
Politics.
Right. I think that with any organization, it's too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and they just never simply, the simplest answer I can think of, they could never come up with a compromise. Now, speaking of all of that, I know that when you're putting something out there for public consumption, we have our various contracts, right? Releases and all of the stuff that we have to sign for and give this person permission to do this and that and the other. I know that there are worldwide, I forget the name of them, but there are generic contracts and releases that allow others to use your stuff, right? So in that same vein, I don't think ASCAP and BMI could come up with, for lack of a better term, a general working relationship where they both could join forces without one thinking that the other was trying to steal somebody's thunder. I mean, the right hand had to know what the left hand was doing. Maybe somebody didn't want us to disclose something. I have no idea. All I know is that they are the two biggest. Well, there's a third one. There's CSAC. They are the three biggest and most known, at least in this country, professional rights organizations out there that are responsible for tracking the number of plays for your content, for your music, collecting your monies, your royalties and such, and making sure they're sent to you. I found out when I was mentioning Diva in Distress, and I just totally glossed over my whole point, but on Diva in Distress, somebody over in Sweden used it for a Christmas show in 2011. And all of a sudden, I'm checking my ASCAP, and there it is. This company used it for their Christmas special, and they used it from time index X to time index 1. I think they used maybe about 3 minutes of the song, and the song's only 5 minutes, and they used 2.5 to 3 minutes. Next thing I know, I got a royalty check in the mail coming 2 weeks later. I'm like, oh, wow. Wasn't that big, but it worked. You know?
Yeah, it's great.
And that's all because I registered it with the Copyright Office as well as registered it with ASCAP. ASCAP kept track. But I will say this, Mark. With regards to both of them, all three of them, any of them, their tracking method sucks. I'm serious. Their tracking method is not the greatest. And there isn't really an app or anything out there other than the old school search and search and search and search to see if somebody's used your likeness or any of your content without getting your permission first. You know, so
how does Spotify get away with not paying any?
I don't know. That one baffles me. I know so many songwriters who have licensing issues with them, and Spotify, don't be mad because this podcast is sent over to them. They're one of the 10 people that we do use through the package that I've got. I'm on Spreaker, SPREAKER.com. And part of that is it sends this very same recording. Once I upload it, it'll send it to several other places. So again, Spotify, don't be mad, but if you do give me the boot, I'm not really going to stress out over it. But I really don't know. I know, again, so many people who are just like dealing with this licensing issue. And they're not the only ones. They're not the only company. It's other companies out there because there's no oversight. I think that's probably the best layman's without really giving it any thought. Why?
Yeah, I guess so, because I'm hearing people like Nile Rodgers have to take day jobs. And you know the hits that they've had, but because these companies aren't paying them anything, they got mortgages to pay like everyone else, and they're actually having to take day jobs.
There you go.
Wow.
I got one for you, Victoria. Pharrell Williams. Happy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How much do you think he got for streams? Just streams. Take a guess.
Streams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. 50 million? I have no idea.
$2,700 in a year's time. Here's why. Mark, I don't know if you know this, but you're going to love this one. And yes, I'm being facetious. Guess what the rate is per stream for a song?
2 cents.
You're being too generous.
Oh my God.
Try
Wow.
0.0075 cents.
Oh my God.
There was an act that was recently signed into law by Trump, which I'm actually think is one of the two things he did right, called the Music Modernization Act. It raised the streaming rate and put some regulation on people like Spotify and others to make sure they're doing right by us. It's a start. It's not a solution.
Is that still in effect, or did
Yes.
Biden reverse it, or did someone reverse it?
It's still in effect.
Just because Trump did it, because people are reversing things just because Trump did it.
Well, that's one of the things I think the Biden administration is going to leave alone. I'm hoping they do, because
Hopefully,
it just wasn't fair for us to get not even pennies on the dollar, but less than a penny on the dollar for stuff that takes us years to create and perfect. Victoria, you went to college for your craft. Mark, you probably did as well. I forget.
I didn't go to college, but I've certainly taken several acting classes during the course of my lifetime, as well as other lessons. So I've certainly contributed. I mean, that's a whole other industry, just making money off actors.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. I mean, we all have some education. Mark, yours is primarily on the job, if that's a safe way to put it. But the fact is, the three of us, as well as many other indie content creators out there, have worked hard to perfect our craft so that we could do what we love. And for us to have put in all that time, effort, and energy into getting something happening and only get less than a penny for a stream? Really?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah,
it's just ridiculous. It's just a whole sign of the climate of the times that we're living in. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember, I don't want to get off too much into a tangent, but I have done background work, like extra work in my life. I actually didn't want to do it, but yeah. I was pressurized into doing it. But anyway, I won't get into all that right now. But I remember when I first did it, they were like giving money away. They would upgrade people left and right. Mm-hmm. They would give you bonuses. All of that has like stopped. Well, it stopped maybe a few months after I got into that business. This is, I'm talking like 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. But it seems like the climate we're living in is like the people that have everything want more, and the people that have next to nothing get less and less and less. And it like is across the board in whatever industry. Yeah,
it's the classic battle of the haves and the haves.
And it's also like how our culture views art, instead of seeing art as integral to our lives and, our well-being, we think of it as something frivolous and, extra that we can enjoy occasionally instead of, I remember reading this like little discussion about Native American culture and how, everybody was also an artist. Like maybe they were hunters as well, but everybody was an artist, and therefore it was very highly regarded.
Right.
That's very true. And I wonder if our way of thinking has permeated to other countries, because there's some countries, I don't know if Russia's one of them or whatever, and I'm sure Russia has its own downsides too, but there are places on this earth where they actually at least provide artists a decent living for doing their art.
They do.
I mean, you might not become a millionaire from it, but you can at least, live a decent life if you're an artist. The government kind of subsidizes those programs or those people. And I don't know if that has changed in these other countries or not, but it's true. It's like there's no regard for artists in this culture that we're living in here in America.
Yeah, well, think about this.
Go all the way to the radio. I mean, there's no. All of it is like cookie cutter kind of stuff. I mean, It's like from one song to the next, and jazz is like, I mean, what are there, like 2 jazz stations in the country? Something like one classical station.
And like, one of them's out here.
Yeah, it's like we're catering to everyone's lowest denominator. The thing that is the easiest for the most people to consume. Yeah. Instead of inspiring people to maybe, I mean, that's what art is. It kind of shows you it shows you what's possible. It kind of motivates you and opens your mind up. It shouldn't be something that just like numbs you, like these shows like the Kardashians or whatever. I mean, that's like coming in.
I'm doing my lurch here. But check it out. That stems back and maybe even further. Think about this. Pretend you're the King of England in the 1700s or sooner. And Bach, actually think back to Amadeus, the movie. Mm-hmm. The king always had someone, a court musician. And I'm sorry to those people who really loved the movie. I loved Amadeus when it came out, but it did wake me up to a few things. Here's the basic premise I'm getting at. The king had a court musician. He hired that person. That person was responsible for all the music, all the entertainment. If the king did not like what you did, not only did you not work, but it was not considered music. And therefore,
I thought you were about to say, but you lost your head too.
Oh, some of them did lose their heads. Some of them did lose their heads. Hey, it needs to be said. But if the king didn't like it, the point is it wasn't art. That has kind of carried over to today, where the powers that be have decided what is and isn't art. Because I posed this question on Facebook many a time. Who's guarding the gate? Who's watching things? Who's who are the gatekeepers? Because if you've got people, and I'm not just talking about the one-hit wonders who actually did a good song. I'm talking about people who auto-tune. I hate auto-tune. If you can't sing, let somebody else sing it. If you've got to use a device that's going to put you on the right note, then let it go. Let the singer sing. That's not music. I'm sorry, folks. Forgive me, but I come from the old school. I was born in the mid-'60s, and I believe that you need to learn your craft and apply it and stay in your own lane. But it goes into the whole, if the king didn't like it, then it wasn't art. That's my whole point. It was up to the one monarch, whether it be the king or the queen. If they didn't like it, the people didn't hear it.
Right.
And that's
interesting. That's
still the same today. And Mark, it goes right into your point about why isn't anything happened. But, it is what it is. It is what it is. But that's why the technology is getting better. To me, it allows us to be able to circumvent all of those closed doors, all of those shut windows that have been boarded up. We can put our own stuff out there. We don't need the big machine anymore. We're indie content creators. We're producers. We're singers. We're actors. We're actresses. I'm sorry, Victoria, but I'm old school. I still call actors and actresses. I get it. I'll get it. I'll come around. But we wear all these hats, and we want our stuff to get out there because we believe it's important for whatever reason. I want to do this because I want to bring out whatever emotion. If I'm Rob Zombie and I'm making the next great horror movie, my goal is to scare the you-know-what out of you. If you come out of that theater or you leave from in front of your screen and you're trembling and you need 12 bottles of water because you are so parched after watching this particular project, I have done my job. The emotion I am bringing out of you is fear. If I have made you wet your pants, I have done my job.
That's so interesting that you said that, because I've often thought that one of the reasons that in this country anyway, that artists are not like on the same level as some other groups is that we do bring out emotion. And this is not an emotional society. Like, we're not in touch, with our emotions. And so artists are actually kind of dangerous. We make people feel, and they maybe don't want to. Anyway, just a random thought you guys can discuss. But anyway, when you brought up Rob Zombie, like forcing emotion, anyway, just a very interesting topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were saying when we were first communicating to put this together about taking bold actions. And I can't think of anybody more bold than a horror movie creator. His or her entire premise is to scare the crap out of you, right?
Yes.
So like I said, if you walk out of that movie theater, which I'm glad are starting to open back up, or you are watching it at home on Netflix and you find yourself in the middle of the night realizing you need to sleep with the light on, then you have done your job. So let's take your thing. Like Victoria, and I mean, I think we have kindly left the reservation of this preset set of questions here. Okay. But this is what Music Outlook LA is all about. See, I get so caught up into it, and I hope nobody sues me, but I do feel a little verklempt, and please talk amongst yourselves. It's one of my favorite lines from Saturday Night Live. All props to Mike Myers. But in what you're doing, you have a certain job you feel you need to get done. You have a certain set of emotions you feel you want your particular project or projects to bring out, right? Mm-hmm. And if I, as the consumer, feel the way you hoped I would feel, then you are doing your job. If you are doing like your Troubled Man project, and I hope I remember the premise correctly, it's basically you and the other actor playing your husband, and he does not, and I hope I'm not giving away anything, stop me if I am, because we do want people to go and watch it, but old boy don't want to work in whatever field he needs to work in just to keep a roof over the head. And your character is a little fed up with it, right?
Right. You got it.
Okay. So what emotion are you trying to say with that? Here's what I'm taking away from it. You're trying to say to the audience, not just describing what this guy's feeling is, but you're trying to get some empathy for the character you're playing. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So if I walk away from that theater, or from actually in front of my computer screen, and I'm like, damn, I feel bad for old girl. I think you've done your job.
Yep.
The technology is to the point to where we don't need the big machine anymore. We can do it ourselves. We're all wearing different hats. So, speaking of the hats and everything else, I think we touched on some of the things that we have to do as content creators, how we have to protect the work, find the right angle, find the right lighting scheme, make sure the lights are in the right place as far as video productions are concerned. So my next question to the both of you is, did either one of you have any difficulties going from the actor-actress roles to being producers and content creators? Mark, let's start with you.
To be honest, I think I would prefer the directing, producing, content creator role. Right. I'm not really such a ham. Don't get me wrong. If there's a really nice, juicy part that for whatever reasons resonates with me, I'm happy to do it, but I'm not really, what's the word? An extrovert.
Right.
I don't really need to be out in front of the camera. If I were to do things, plan another route for myself, if I were to go back 30 or so years, it would probably be, I would have probably produced a producing kind of route versus an acting route. I would have probably chosen, if I had a choice in the matter, well, everyone has a choice in the matter. If I could go back in time, I probably would have tried to do things as Ron Howard did. I would be very happy if I had a career like Ron Howard did.
Yeah. Victoria, what about you? Going from being in front of the camera to behind the camera, any difficulties for you?
Yes, I definitely prefer writing and acting, the more creative stuff. Switching to the other side of my brain is hard. I can produce. I'm pretty okay at it. I just don't love it. Yeah, is the problem. I like it more. I like it more now that it's stuff that I've created. I can actually get into it. But someday I'd like to just turn that over to someone like Mark and say, "Hey, man, take it away."
There you go.
Take it away, Mark.
All right. Last couple ones real quick. What kind of gear are you guys using to make your stuff happen? I know we're all Apple heads here, but just throw it right in there. What are you guys using to make your projects?
Who's going first?
Doesn't matter.
Go ahead, Mark.
So that short that you saw, I can't remember for sure, but I believe that it was I used my iPad, a Sony DCR X2100. You know, that camera is probably 10 or 15 years old at that point, as well as the Sony DCR PC9. I'm mainly using my iPhone Pro 12, which has better video quality than both of those cameras. At some point, I probably will get another camera just to get up to speed. I mean, those other two cameras I have run on mini DV. So, I've heard that, you can have a certain look just off that. So maybe it's worth holding onto them and using those tapes up at some point. Yeah. I have Final Cut Pro is what I use my editing in. I was using GarageBand, but now I've upgraded to Logic. I haven't really started getting into that yet, but when I start my podcast, I probably will record it on Logic. I have a Scarlett 2i2 interface.
Right.
And I have a Yamaha MG06X mixing console, which is pretty handy. It's a little bit bigger than my hand, but it still, does what it needs to do. And my keyboards are a P115 by Yamaha. It's a MIDI, but it's not a workstation or anything like that. Weighted keys, so I enjoy it because it gives a similar feel to a regular piano with the weighted keys. And then I have a MXL 2001 unidirectional condenser microphone that I most likely will be using for my podcast, and what I use for my vocals if I'm recording live. Then I tend to use my Barodynamic M88.
Right. Cool. And Victoria, back to you on the same question. What gear are you using to create your projects?
Well, I'm shooting on this iPhone 11 Pro Max, which is the best camera I think I've ever used in my life. I also have an iPad. And then just to keep in touch, as we're shooting on our Zoom calls, I have an HP laptop that also doubles as a tablet, so I can fold it up or open it or whatever. And then lighting, I have a newer ring light, which I really like. I've got 2 of those, and I want some of those little LED panels because they're wonderful. And then for my voiceover stuff,
forgot to mention.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We have to talk then. And then
10-08-86-12 is the one I have.
Okay.
Okay,
cool. And then for voiceover, I have a Blue Yeti microphone that I love, and I use, because I'm not a pro, I use Audacity software to feed into that, and it does the job.
There you go. I've was using Audacity. I still pull it out. It's in mothballs, but I do dust it off to use it. I'm working with a couple of other people who are putting their shows together, and I mentioned Audacity right off the bat. Just go on ahead, grab Audacity. It's free of charge, and all it's going to do is give you 2 separate tracks to start off with, which is really all you're doing for a podcast. It's yourself on track 1, for example, and your guest on track 2 recorded separately. And the Blue Yeti is a good mic to do all of that audio work on. I mean, it's got a USB. It connects directly into the computer. We've got one. Don't have a problem with it. We've got a ball. I like the sound of it. But I got blessed and we were able to use a Rode NT1A, which is pretty much a singer's mic, but it does, as you can hear, it does a pretty good job in recording conversations. Also an audio interface to turn all those audio signals into digital, and mixing board and all of that. I got my little camera, lights, and the whole whole 9 yards, all the bells and whistles, And
so if I'm doing something like your or a podcast show basically,
mm-hmm.
and let's say I have a co-host, a moderator, and a guest or two, do I need more than what I have then? Since we're basically talking about we want clean audio for 5 people, or at least up to 5 people.
Well, if you eventually want to do that, you could. The Scarlett 2i2 is a 2 audio input in interface. So you're going to.
I would need to upgrade that then for what I want to do.
Eventually, yeah, but the workaround is you're going to have yourself on one channel, and one workaround is to just copy the extra number of tracks required. In your case, if it's a grand total of 5, yourself being one, and you've got 4 other people in the show, you're going to have, starting out, 2 tracks. The other 4 people are going to be on the second track. So to get 4 more tracks, you're going to have to copy it 3 times. And it's
so I would do that through Logic?
Yes, you can do that through Logic. Make 3 additional tracks for a total of 5. Copy that second audio, or unless it's the first audio, whichever one has the more people on it, you copy that, and then you paste it into the other tracks. And then what you're going to have to do is listen and decide who's going to be on what track. And once you've decided that, delete the other people out of the other tracks, so that eventually you're on 1, for example. The next person, whoever you designate, is 2, 3, 4, and 5 until you're finished. And that way everybody's got their own, and you're able to, at that point, edit properly, tweak the audio, your highs and lows, whether you're going to use an EQ or a compressor, that kind of thing, and do it that way. Otherwise, yes, in answer to your question, eventually, the larger your interface is, the more inputs you've got, the more out you have. Because the way the interfaces work, based off of the USB, it reads it, and your computer talk. And the computer knows how many ins your interface has. It knows mine has 4. So, if I just have 2, do I have to worry about people overlapping each other? Like, is that going to be harder to clean up if they're like? Does it have to be clean? Like, people need to wait until someone's finished talking, or is that not an issue if they're overlapping? I can still clean it up. You can still clean it up later. But if you copy those 2 tracks, then you stand a better chance of being able to make it even cleaner. With the 3 of us right now, I'm on a single track by myself, and the 2 of you in recording of this are on a single track. And I will copy that single track so that, Mark, you're on one by yourself, Victoria, you're on one by yourself, and I will go and delete you out of one track and delete Victoria out of the other track, and leave everything where it is. And that way, when I play it, it'll still be in sync and it'll still flow like a conversation. But I take things into consideration that, like in this case, I know that, and this is like the second or third time I've done this before, where I've had more than one person on the same interview. People are already going to know to wait their turn to speak. And if they talk over each other, well, then, you listen to it. You're the producer. You decide eventually, does that sound okay or doesn't it? Will my audience like it or not? So it's a matter of taste, really. But, if people are such a perfectionist that you really, really have to get that audio just right, then yeah. The workaround is, if you don't have the interface with enough inputs going in, make copies of that track and then assign everybody their own track, and then delete the other people out of the other one, so that by the time you're finished, it's a little longer in your editing, but by the time you're finished, I have my own track, Mark has his own track, Victoria has her own track, and if there were 2 other people on the call, each one would have their own track, and I would not have to worry about anybody talking through or whatever, and it'll all come out nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But there are workarounds to all of that, and that's one of the things I enjoy about doing what I do. Yeah, it sometimes can be a pain to spend 1, 2, 3, 4 days or more trying to figure out why something isn't working. But when you finally get it working, and provided that what you're doing didn't require an update, and that update didn't mess up what you already were doing, which is something I got to go back and figure out for something else, which you guys 2 already know about. But, once I figure that part out, it's like, oh, okay, I still like it. I like grabbing the book. I'm the guy that reads the manual. I am that guy. I'm the guy who reads the manual or will know where in the manual to look for.
I have a confession to make. I'm not that guy. I am usually the first to look on YouTube and see if I can find a video that will guide me through it.
Hey, I'm a member of the University of
Apple
YouTube
support.
myself.
Apple support has been my best friend.
There you go. I'm a member of that as well. I think we've covered quite a bit today, so I'm going to close this one out with, a couple of last ones for both of you. What lessons did you guys take from the various people that you've mentored under? And do you still use those things today? Those life lessons, if you will. Mark, why don't you start off?
Punctuality, being on time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me if I am late for anything.
Yeah.
I would prefer to get there early and read a book than be late.
There you go. Victoria, what about you? What lessons have you picked up along the way that you still use today?
Really support your fellow. Well, try to be supportive of lots of people, but really support your fellow artists. Because it can be such a hard road, jealousy has absolutely no place in this industry ever, anywhere. You're not going to win yourself any friends and favors being jealous of people. So, celebrate everybody's success around you.
All right. That sounds good.
That's a good one. That's a good one. And I would add, don't be comparing yourself to other people. Everyone's got their own road, their own plight. You can let people encourage you and motivate you, but because a person has X or was able to do this in that amount of time or whatever, don't beat yourself up just because maybe your path hasn't been the same way. I mean, you use other people's success to encourage you, but not to hammer yourself over the head because maybe you're not at where they're at.
Exactly. And this is going to bring us to our last one. And again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for indulging in us, as all of us, especially me, as I tend to do, got on the soapbox a little once too often. But, that's what we do here at Music Outlook LA. We stick to what's happening, but at the same time, if there's something we really need to speak on, we're going to talk about it. So that's what makes Music Outlook LA, Music Outlook LA. So for the both of you, I ask this of each and every one of my guests. What's in your car? In other words, what do you all listen to when you're out and about in good old LA, in the traffic, walking, whatever, going from point A to B? What do you guys listen to when you're out and about? Victoria, what do you listen to when you're doing your thing?
Well, every day is different. Well, like yesterday it was hip hop. The day before that it was the sort of indie rock.
Right.
I also love to listen to books on YouTube. I love this brand new book that I've been listening to called the game of life and how to play it. So honestly, every day is completely different.
All right. Mark, what about you? What's got your ear all abuzz?
Well, throughout my life, I've enjoyed different kinds of music. In fact, when I used to go out, I used to host this karaoke evening, and I enjoyed singing as many different kinds of genres as I could. But to listen to, other than if I'm, working on a song for whatever reason, I'll generally listen to several different versions of the same song if that is available. But in my own personal one, I don't have any agenda. I'm listening to 88.1 K-Jazz.
One of my favorite stations. One of my favorite stations. That's all right. I love it. I love it. I want to thank you two for putting up with me today. It's been a long one. Ladies and gentlemen, I may share some of the technical woes we went through to get this recorded for you so that it could be put out there for your consumption. It's what happens to all of us indie artists, and it happens on all levels. So even radio stations have to deal with this. I mean, you turn on the news, somebody's having some kind of technical issue. It's what happens. It's going to happen. It's a part of life. So my apologies and my thanks to my guests today, Mr. Marc Copage and Ms. Victoria Savage. And, that's going to do it for this episode of Music Outlook LA, gigs, gear, and info. And again, thanks to both of my guests. So be sure to check out the show notes to get a hold of their website and contact information. And folks, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast here at Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com. Music Outlook LA is also available on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, CastBox, the TuneIn Radio app, and if you don't have any of those, you can go to Listen Notes, the podcast search engine, type in Music Outlook LA, and it'll give you a list of all the places we are broadcast. So just about anywhere you can hear it, it's probably there. Everybody, thank you so much. Mark, Victoria, thank you so much.
Thank you, Will.
No problem.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Hey.
Thank you, Mark. It was great.
And we are going to be in touch with one another. And everybody, I'm Will Kimsey, a.k.a. WK Music. Peace. This podcast is both brought to you and produced by Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Music Outlook LA is a copyrighted broadcast of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Will Kimsey or Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or any other use of this product without the express written consent of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC is strictly prohibited.